Call to order the special select board meeting for the town of Underhill. It is Thursday, January 18th, 2024. It is 6 p.m. Is there, since it's a special meeting, adjustments to the agenda are not permitted, but is there opening public comment? Anyone? Seeing none on the screen, or is there anybody on the screen?
Someone named Michael just popped in and maybe they have a comment.
There's no one here in the room. Public comment.
Michael, do you have a public comment?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, we will move on then to the review and consider accepting a final FY25 budget. This is version 5.
Okay, we are at version 5, and I've given you a packet, and then I just dropped with each of you an additional packet. So what I'd like to do is start at the top of what I wrote and deal with the largest issue that is currently at hand. You'll see under the discussion, version 5, under line 87, I highlighted $165,695 to add to the budget, which is to retire the deficit from fiscal year 23, which was a surprise to all of us yesterday. So what I'd like to do is explain what that means and then propose something different than what I actually put in here in version 5. And I'd like to explain that as best I can and understand that it can be complicated, so I want to try and make it as simple as possible. If you look on your page 2, which is where we determine the tax rate, it looks like this.
Just the 2 pages.
No, this is the packet that I sent you originally with the budget. If you look on this page, it was emailed to you. So I'm gonna just point out, if you look at the surplus calculation, it says unassigned fund balance from fiscal year 23, 282,000 and change. Let's just go with 282 for discussion. Typically, what we do is, in order to determine, keep in mind this was fiscal year 23, in order to determine whether we have a surplus or a deficit going into fiscal year 25, because 24 has already started, it's happening. We're now doing the budget for 25. So what we do is we look at that number from fiscal year 23, and that's called our unassigned fund balance. A surplus or deficit in our terms is defined because we have a policy in place that the select board, that we've been adhering to for several years. I don't remember what year it came about. That's not important. We like to maintain, and we have a policy that says we will maintain 15% of the budget that we're working on, of the running expenses, as a contingency fund. This is separate from reserves, separate from anything else. We're saying, okay, if our budget's 5 million, we're going to keep 15% in a slush fund, which means we need to have 15% at least of that budget in our unassigned fund balance. If we have more than that, then we're running a surplus. Then we would say to the voters, we have a surplus. Here's what we propose to do with it. You vote and you tell us what you want to, if you want to do that. If we have a deficit, Vermont statute says we need to make up that deficit. And there are several ways you can make up that deficit. The most simple way to make up the deficit is to add that into your budget that you're working on, and for that to become part of the budget. So for our purposes, we're about 100, and again, if you look at the surplus deficit page, we're $165,000 in deficit, according to this calculation. So in version 5, what I did is I added a line under the expenses into that and let that flow through. Then I sat down and I looked at that again today and said, do we need to ask the voters of Underhill to pay that $165,000? Do we need that much? And I thought about what are the things that are happening in the current year that we're in right now, fiscal year 24, that are adding to that unassigned fund balance. And right away, what came to mind is that we had the voters of Underhill in fiscal year 24 that we're in at town meeting voted to take $100,000 and put it into the highway contingency reserve. So we have 100,000 of that 165. Does that make sense to you? Because if you look at the 2-page sheet that I just gave you, on one of the sheets, you're going to see this number. This is the page I just gave you. And you'll see that unassigned fund balance at the 200. The things that go into that unassigned fund balance are all the money that we could use in an emergency. And that includes the reserves. So we have that 100,000. So we don't really need the whole 165,000. We only really need, I put in 75. So I'll have to do a version 6 for you, which we can do on the fly, but I wanted to start that discussion because that's probably the most significant thing that we need to determine with the budget going to fiscal year 25. Because if we put that whole 165,000, you can see on there what it does to the bottom line. If we put that whole amount in, it makes the budget about a 3% increase. If we do the 75, it's a lot less. So.
Can I say a little quick something?
Mhm.
I think what that made total sense to me that time. Sherry too is nodding. I think the key to remembering in this unassigned fund balance is we're not in the hole that much. It's the 15%. And I gave you a copy of our fund balance. And I wouldn't recommend looking at it right now, but if you wanted to read it, it's basically there as a cushion, right? So what Jennifer, I think, is saying that and not to say that you're going to tap into that $100,000 reserve that we passed at last year's town meeting, but you can take that into account in your unassigned fund balance, right? And then make up the difference.
Right.
Is that what you're proposing?
Because it's in there.
It's in there already. It's weird.
It wasn't there in fiscal year 23,
Here
but
we
it's
are.
there now.
Here we are closing out fiscal year 23. We're in 24 and we're budgeting for 25. So it's like, it's kind of it can be a little bit messy.
Right. But if you look at what those funds are for unassigned, you'll see it's all those reserves that are listed under the committed funds. Those are all in there, and those all add up to that 252. So all the fund equity numbers. So that 100,000, which isn't here, really is here. So I'm just saying, if we add that whole 165,000 into the budget as an expense, we're basically putting in an extra 100,000. You're padding it by a lot, and I believe that it would be entirely unnecessary.
So the $100,000 that the voters approved at town meeting, I thought that $100,000 went to the highway fund.
It does. The highway fund, the highway capital reserve, the highway contingency fund, the highway garage reserve, those are all part of what is called our unassigned funds.
So it doesn't matter as long as it's in that category.
Correct. It has to be in our funds, yeah.
The only difference is it's not really going to show up because we're closing the books for 23. We have the money for 24, but it's not going to show up here.
Right.
That's the difference. And typically, it's not going to show up in our audit on our fund balance sheet
right.
for fiscal year 23. It's not going to show because it's not there yet.
Because it happened in 24.
But if you keep it in mind, this is a little different than anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah.
And I put the past 4 years of history just for a little bit of background. And I think Jennifer just did that too in the sheet. But I guess my point being is, if you were to just solely look at that 23 audit and look at the unassigned fund balance, you'd say, oh, there's not 15% there.
Right.
But in essence,
But there is.
there is.
But every year, that unassigned balance fund should be 15% of the budget for the town of Underhill.
Yes,
And you would add in the highway and
Yes.
the regular fund
every year.
every year.
It's always looked at exactly the same equation. What happened is, and why we got caught with our pants down, so to speak, is we didn't get our final audit until the 11th, this week, okay? And in it, which you'll see on my page, on page 1 where I say explanation of the deficit, 3 significant things happened that affected the fund balance that I was unaware of and that I didn't know about until the 11th. One is we recorded, and these are things that, when we record things as income on our income statements, then it goes into our fund balance. The auditors then pulled these 3 things out. And the most significant thing is the $350,000 short-term loan. Usually we do, when we get a loan, we take the money, it's considered income. It's revenue on our balance sheet and on our income statement. And it moves into our, we would think of that as equity. For some reason, Lisa, our auditor's boss, Chris, said that is not how you handle a short-term note. Since I had never handled that before on a fiduciary level, to my knowledge, I don't know the last time we ever did something where we borrowed $350,000 and then we paid it back from one fiscal year to the next. We did that whole thing because remember, we couldn't do the 20-year bond when we needed to.
No, that's not true. We did it to double up on the pavement.
Oh, to double up on
We
the payment.
doubled up on the pavement, which
Right.
we had that discussion, but you're going to pay the piper because the following year you don't pave and then you got to pay the money.
Right.
So that's the situation we're in.
So because it was short term, the auditor said,
Right, you don't get to count that as income. So that got pulled out. So where I thought we were heading into a surplus and getting ready to have Sherry put together surplus questions for our warning, all of a sudden this week, I was like, wait a minute, there's no surplus, there's a deficit. So I contacted Lisa and met with her and I said, can you explain what changed? And so I've highlighted that to explain to you all and the residents of Underhill what changed. So that's why we're caught with this. And this is why typically we try to get the audit completed a lot earlier. So we don't run into we know whether we have a surplus or a deficit before, the second week of January. So
So this 15%, this is statute, correct?
no,
Policy.
it's policy. And it's the 15%, that's on top of and above and beyond any reserves or anything we do with reserves. It's just built in, baked in.
That's a policy you and I signed, Dan, back in 2010,
Right.
12.
Back when flip-flops are in style.
Right.
And there have been years since 2010 where we haven't had the full 15%, where we've had 11%, and we just run with it. But this time, we're a lot further off. So that's why I put that in, wanted to make sure we address that, because that's the biggest issue. And I can very easily, once we get through the rest of these items on here, I can print off a version of the budget for all of you on the fly that just simply says whatever it is you recommend we put in there for that deficit pay down, which I added to the budget to line 87. If you say, let's see what it looks like with 75,000, we can do that. If you say you want to go with less, we can go with less. But I can't make that decision. My recommendation would be that we go with 75,000 because we already have the 100,000.
but we really only need 66,000.
Well, depending on where the budget ends up. So that, we don't have the budget finalized. So if you look here, the way we calculate that is we have our unassigned fund balance, and then it's based on, it's a 15% of our budget. But since we haven't figured out exactly what the 2025 budget is, there's still items that we haven't.
So that's why you're going with that another 10K.
Yes. Yes. So, but like I said, I can go downstairs, I can pop these numbers, change them, and run down to the copier and print them out and bring them up. So
Let's see where we end up.
let's see, that's what I thought. So anyway, so we can come back to this one. I know it's a lot to sink in. The other changes that we made are a lot less exciting. Line 111, we added 10,000 to Veterans Park upgrades. And Brad spoke to Alan Morse, so he can tell you what he learned.
So yeah, so followed up on Bob's recommendation about sprucing up or just doing some long time deferred maintenance on the fountain that's in Veterans Park. Alan spent a little bit of time and diagrammed it, and I got Randy Clark Sr. involved a little bit, and the consensus is, I think, is to repair it's kind of a historic fountain anyway, so repair the structure. I think it just needs some pointing and so forth. But the more important thing is the sidewalk. It's kind of like a lollipop. It goes out straight and then it goes around the fountain. So the sidewalk looks like a lollipop if you look at it from the air. Sidewalk's kind of narrow. It's only 3 feet, if that, and it's not in good condition. There was a little spur that went out to 15. And after talking with Alan, we both agreed that we don't want to encourage people to go out towards 15. So just keep it, now we got a new sidewalk on Park Street. Someone could cross the street and then get on this little sidewalk, stay off the grass to go out to the fountain. So he, I think his son-in-law works at Ireland, and he got roughly 100 lineal feet of sidewalk, and he got a rough price of $4,000 for that. And I talked to Russ about maybe just getting rid of the old sidewalk and prepping the surface. So if we got rid of the old sidewalk, prep the surface, then had someone point or fix up the fountain, right? And then the fountain work's done, get the water running back again. Maybe get the water district to set us a curb stop, a tap and a curb stop, so then we can have running water. Then pour the sidewalk at the end, finish it with the sidewalk. So I think Jennifer put in 10,000. So I think that's a pretty good number if you wanted to do that. And pointing up the fountain could be a volunteer effort too. We'll have to see how bad it is, but.
What does it mean to point to?
Well, it's all made of stone. So just like you're pointing a foundation or
Like putting cement in.
pointing a stone foundation, be putting cement in where it's lacking.
Yeah, tuck pointing the
Yeah.
mortar. How much of that park is in the town of Jericho?
A little bit of it, but the fountain's completely in Underhill.
Okay.
Yeah. I know my thought went there too, Dan, a little bit. But maybe we could get some in-kind, something from Jericho, maybe. I don't know if they wanted to contribute. Yeah. It's kind of a small, so I guess the decision is, do you want to try to do that or?
I know our sign, welcome to Underhill, is in Jericho.
I didn't know that.
That's the water.
Randy let us know.
I'm trying to get a handle on exactly how old that fountain is, and I've got a 1915 Sanborn insurance map that doesn't show it, so it doesn't go back that old. But I think it did go back to the horse days a little bit. Might have been a watering trough. So the water, there is a pipe there. It's rusted out. Doesn't.
So it would run just during the non-freezing temperature?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You'd run it in the summer. And, yeah. Just. But if we could encourage the water district to, put us a curb stop there, then we can control the water anytime we want. So.
Did Patty fix the
probably drain-
microphone?
So anyway, we can figure out the drainage, just a bunch of catch basins close by.
So that's the only significant thing. We got a letter from Chittenden County Court Tax. It was insignificant. I don't remember whether it went up or down, but it was just a small change. So those are the only things. So
Then we have the radio.
yeah, but that's not in the budget. I didn't put it in the budget.
No, I know, but we just have some information that
Oh,
Russ
yeah.
got. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about it
Yeah.
or
Because you're supposed to get it for him anyway.
I didn't know how that was left. So I gave you copies of it.
Well, we did get quotes, so I don't know which ones you want me to, which equipment you'd want me to add into the budget. So I didn't add those. I just got those today, so.
Yeah, at the last meeting, we talked about a radio communications, and it was hoped to be able to get some kind of numbers for this week's meeting. So if we wanted to put something in the budget, we could. A lot has gone on since last Thursday night. But I did talk to the owner of Radio North yesterday morning, and he got this back to us today. So there's not a total because I didn't know how many of what we would need, but we can total something up. But basically it was to repeater system. We'd obviously have to find a location to put this repeater. New some handheld radios. I think we need a few new radios for a few pieces of equipment, but I don't think we need them for everything. And he kind of put this together on what little bit of information we really had at the time, but I think it gives us a rundown. But some of the radios that we do purchase, the last purchased radios that they have record of was in 2015. And one in 14 seems weird. I thought there was some, I wasn't here obviously, but there was a purchase of multiple equipment radios. I don't know if any of you remember that or not.
It was 2012. I think we switched from the narrow banding came into effect, and we switched as many as we could to digital.
Okay. So I'm hoping that those radios would still be usable. They seem to, when they do, they work fine. They just can't, they're good radios, but they just don't have the rest of it to go along with it to make them transmit and receive from further parts of town. So I know you weren't here last week, Patty, but our issue was, and it's been an issue for quite some time, is that we cannot communicate throughout the town from truck to truck, and even sometimes from the town office to ourselves if we're working out on the road. And for instance, for myself in Irish Settlement, Pleasant Valley, I can't talk to anybody, and nobody can talk to me, and I have no cell service out there. So it's very, if something was to happen,
It's legit.
it would be not good. So then it really kind of came up last Wednesday when we had this event and we couldn't communicate. So it just kind of refreshed it again. So we brought it up last Thursday.
So my question is, and I can add this, I have now started a version 5-2. So if there are changes that you want me to add now to what we've been discussing, or remove or add, I can add those numbers and then we'll see what happens to the numbers. So I didn't know on that quote what we need to add.
So I guess before I'd want to take action with this, and we have some limited time, and I think that this might be something we might be able to adjust on the fly, is that this is going with a repeater with VHF. And my understanding is that if we changed to UHF, we could rent space off the mountain and be able to communicate almost anywhere in the state. So the guys being on Poker Hill would be able to talk to somebody on Corbett Road without any problem at all. That would take away the whole need for a repeater and an antenna and stuff like that. that I don't know if we necessarily would need to buy into, because where is the sweet spot in Underhill to have an antenna and a repeater, and be able to reach, all the corners of Underhill. So utilizing Mount Mansfield might be, advantageous, and we may want to consider, looking at that before we make a decision as far as this equipment. I mean, I think this will work, but it will be limited because of the geography of Underhill. We may want to look at, utilizing Mansfield and see what it would cost to rent so many licenses for our trucks and a couple portables or whatever, and then be able to go that route and then save the price of installing the antennas and stuff like that, because the antennas on the trucks and on the portables should be able to hit the mountain and here too. So I'm wondering if we could get another bid or another quote, and then, have it come back to the board, and we can, have an emergency meeting or a special meeting and, make that the final thing to address in the budget. Because I think the numbers would change.
Higher or lower?
I don't know.
Oh.
I'm assuming it would be lower because the repeater alone on this is like almost 13,000. It's 12,700. So we may not need to have that component. So I'm guessing it might be lower, but I don't know. I'm not a radio guy, but
What does the fire department, do they have UHF?
they don't. The fire department struggles with communication in both the third entrance to Poker Hill and that end of town, as well as the north end of Pleasant Valley, and way out on Nashville Road and down by River Road in Jericho. So they have multiple antennas one on South Hill and one on Orr Road that they go back and forth with, and they still struggle with having the appropriate antennas. There was talk about maybe an antenna being located over near Scotchard's Pottery in Westford, on Cowie Road might be a good spot to put an additional antenna, or on over here somewhere on Pleasant Valley, maybe a good spot. But all these things will cost money to put antennas and repeaters and everything like that. Whereas if you look at Mansfield and buy into that, we would be changing from VHF to UHF, but if the infrastructure is already up on the mountain, and that's what a lot of businesses, I guess, do, maybe we should consider that for a few minutes and then kind of go through. I'm all for having it so that, people can communicate effectively with one another. And, wouldn't it be nice if you could communicate, Russ, from Underhill, and the guys are up in Johnson getting a load of sand, and you'd be able to communicate with them effectively. Whereas if we have this type of setup, I don't know that you'd be able to do that, because that would be like an added benefit of having, Mansfield.
That sounds like a really good option. Why doesn't the fire department do that?
That's a good question. I think that's technology that has come about relatively recently, and I don't know that antenna would necessarily be available for like emergency communications. I think it's more designed for like business. I don't know that you would want to be relying upon that, in a life and death type of emergency type situation. This is going to be like business as usual, I think, for us. We're not in the, we deal in emergencies when there's a natural disaster, but we don't deal with, life and death, so to speak, with the road crew. There's a reason for that, but I don't know if they allow, because you'd have every, emergency agency would want to, go up on the mountain.
Who owns the antenna up there? Is it a public enterprise or commercial?
I don't know. I would only be guessing. I don't know who owns the antenna, but I think Radio North would likely be able to tell you who that is, and would be able to get us, point us in the right direction and tell us how much it would cost to do that. I know Andy Forsberg has talked about that was something that we should consider several years ago. And I wish he was here tonight. I'd be happy to ask him, but he's not. So
So from a budget standpoint, and because of our timing and everything, and our constraints that we have time-wise, I don't know how quickly we could get those numbers and throw those into the budget. And I have no idea what amount or range we're talking about to throw anything in hypothetically. So would you propose we have another meeting between now and next Thursday, or?
I think if we could do like an email up or down, we could come up with a number between now and Monday and then have an email go out, by noontime Monday. And then if people could respond by, say, 6 o'clock Monday, saying, do you want to go with option A? Option A would be this proposal, say.
Right.
And option B would be the other proposal, and whatever proposal, I guess, goes with the board, would be the numbers that we would add into
Right.
the budget. I guess that's how I'm on the fly thinking, if that would be acceptable or not. Between Russ and I, if we could, try to see what that number would be, type of thing, and then, get it out to the board and then get a response.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for me to just, once I know a number, plug it in here and send out a revised budget to everybody. Takes, 30 seconds.
Just the question is whether Russ can pull that together in that short a time frame or not, whether you'd be able to,
Bob said he'd help me.
okay. Or do we put a placeholder in? I just quickly tallied this up and then probably had typos in it, but this is close to 23,000. Do we put a placeholder of 25,000? I mean, if you can get alternate quotes, give you some breathing room to get some quotes, just put a placeholder of 25,000 in for radio equipment, and that becomes your ceiling. It's just another way to slice this.
So, I mean, our goal is to get the budget as close as we can so that for next Thursday, that was our goal, was to have a budget that the board would then
So
recommend.
next Thursday, we're signing the warning,
Okay,
which is contingent on the budget, right? Because the numbers have to be in there.
right.
For the articles, and then it's going to the town report the next morning,
So we
first
have 1
thing.
week.
We have 1 week. But I don't know. I kind of like the sounds of what Patty was suggesting, but I mean, what if this costs, say it comes back and it's like $50,000 or something like that? I mean,
I don't think it would. I really, because I think you're buying a lot less equipment. Yes, you're buying new radios for here and all the trucks, you'd have to replace the truck radios. And if you want to get a couple new portables, yes, you'd have to get new portable radios for like directing traffic and stuff like that. And for here, when, something does come up, but you would not be looking at antennas and repeaters because that's already.
what's the price of a regular radio? I know it's not the
You're
UHF.
comparing UHF and VHF, so it's like, what's the cost of a microwave and an air fryer? It's just like two different types of technology, type of thing, so.
If we were to go to UHF, what does that do for our other communications, like with the bus garage? And
I don't think you'd get rid of what you have.
it'd be a
This would
second
be in addition to,
additional radio? They have to be separate.
So they're carrying 2 radios.
they could have 2 radios in the truck. I mean, the fire trucks have 2 radios in them. So it's just like, they just know that this one they would be using,
It's not
on almost a daily basis, but if something comes up and they need to talk to the bus and say, hold on a minute or whatever, then, or the fire department or whatever.
Master rescue or
It's not
whatever.
one person.
Maybe what would make sense is to put the extra radio in the trucks that have the trouble, like Poker Hill and Irish Settlement, right? Those 2 trucks, if the extra radios are in, those are the 2 that can't communicate, correct?
Well, really, so I'm
But
in,
then if they're on
I'm in
this-
the Irish settlement, and at any particular time.
Oh, I see.
The
You
other
gotta
3
talk to
trucks are
They don't
on
have it?
Poker Hill.
Right. You need it on the other end to talk.
Yeah.
So you got a salt truck that's going both
Right.
directions, then you've got 2 trucks on the other end of town that are maintaining the roads.
I think that's, if the board would agree, that's wait until Monday, deadline of Monday, to try to come up with a comparing quote.
So if we could get a number, let's just say by Monday, we get a number for that. we come up with a consensus on what we want to do with the deficit number. If there's any other outstanding issues, that I think there are some, personnel, I think there's personnel benefit related ones that are still out there. Any of those changes that we want to put in here before you guys consider your final. And then I could send out that one on Monday to everyone.
And the warning could be written according to that budget with the new numbers in. And then if you got to Thursday and said, well, wait a minute, maybe we went a little bit overboard here and want to cut it down, we can adjust the numbers.
So that would mean that, so another budget would go out to you, version 6 would go out to you on Monday or Tuesday. And then I think you'd have to somehow each in writing email me back and say yes or no or whatever. And then it would be presented at the meeting on Thursday before.
For you to approve.
For you to approve. And then the warning, and we'll have that number, whatever that is, plugged into the warning. Will that work? I mean, I know it's really not entirely comfortable in seat of the pants.
She hasn't pulled out her hair yet.
No, she hasn't, but I'm watching her chew her gum and it's making me nervous.
But it's kind of safe to say, though, like what Patty was implying, like if it's in that range, everybody would be comfortable with it, right? So
it may be significantly less, but I mean,
right.
I thought the whole point was to try to get it as accurate as possible, but.
Right, but if you can't turn around a quote, you can contact people and they might be like, well, I can get that to you, but it's going to take me a week. You may not be able to get a hard and fast number. So put a placeholder of roughly 25,000 in, if you can't. And that allows us to do some research later.
Yeah, he was very quick about this quote. So within a few hours, he had this back.
Okay.
So
I think your question though about, it'd have to be 2 radios. You keep what you have to communicate with the buses, right?
Is
Maybe
Monday
it's
enough
simple.
time to get a quote? Or do we want to say Tuesday, we'll get an email? Give us an extra day.
Tuesday's probably more realistic.
Because Friday, sometimes it's hard to do business.
I'm going to just tell you while you're mulling that over, if I change that 165 to 75 and I add in 25 to the technology line on highway, or is that equipment, small equipment? It would be equipment purchase, right?
what about
Or technology.
The last radios on our equipment list in the town report has radios that were purchased, like with our equipment.
Mhm.
There's a line that says
Radio.
With the radio.
no, there's a separate line. I think it was 2013. And it says 5 radios or something
Yeah.
as part of our equipment lines.
That's when they upgraded it.
Right. So what I'm saying, is this a capital maybe?
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah, it's long term.
But either way, it's still adding.
Got to get it in
I just
there
need a line to
somewhere.
put it in.
But
I'll put
for
it
now.
under, I'm going to put it under vehicles and equipment for what, 25?
Yeah.
Just going to see what that looks like. Okay. Ba-ba-boom. So what that does is that gives us a 1.1% increase in the tax rate over last year, or a less than penny increase. 0.0060. And that's without any changes to the payroll benefit line. So that gives us some room. So the 25 doesn't affect it that much. We brought the 165 to 75. So that, just so you get an idea of that. So a 1% increase is significantly less than a penny.
So there was the one other item was the post office. Is there anything else to talk about before? I've been asked to look into the post office for quite some time now. And it's just, I hadn't had anybody to it took this amount of time to get somebody to take a look at it. The floor is sagging in the middle. So, there's two issues. Bob brought up one issue about the foam on the walls. So the walls have been spray foamed and they're just open foam. So I don't know about what the fire standards are with that. Bob can speak to that, but I will just tell you that the floor sagging, there's some joists that are sagging in the bottom. And I met with Pete Saja today. He didn't think it was a day's work you could secure that floor, so it's not, because it's starting to crack some of the lath and plaster. And then Jerry's chair kind of drifts to the center because it's uneven. We can't take all the curse out of the floor, but we could take, quite a bit of it. So he thought, a day's work. So day's work and materials.
So maybe a couple $1,000s.
Yeah, if that. He threw out like $1,200, but maybe a couple $1,000. The other thing is the foam, and I don't know anything about the foam. I don't know if there's fire retardant paint that can be put on it. I just don't know enough about it.
So when it comes to a thermal or vapor barrier over foam, you have to get the product that goes along with the foam that was there, because every product is different. So the first step would be is to try and identify what product was used. So I don't know if we have a copy of the cut sheet of the foam that was used, or we know who did that, or whatever. That would be extremely helpful. If you don't, then you could always go back and put 1/2-inch plywood or 1/2-inch drywall over the top of it. The other way is to go and put either a ceramic type material or like an intermittent type paint over it, but you need to make sure that the paint that you're using is adaptable to the foam that's there. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
So the Energy Committee was involved with the spray foam. So if we could round it down to a year, we might be able to track something down to tell us more about the foam. I can just tell you, building a wall on the inside of there would be a very difficult job, because it's really low in there to begin with. It's like you can't stand up in there. I can't anyway. And there's it's really nicely done, but it's just in order to attach a wall properly to sheetrock.
They also make like a rated plastic that you might be able to consider as well. So you can almost might be able to put like a rated plastic over the foam. The foam's the bad character. So something to go over that foam would be what you'd be looking for. So there's several different products. They're all going to range at different prices. It's just a matter of, what fits right for being in there. So I think the first step would be is to try to identify the foam and then, explore the different options that would be available.
Should we put some money in as a placeholder for repairs and maintenance on the schoolhouse if we were going to need to do this into the budget?
So we're talking about the post office of the school.
The post office, yeah.
Yeah, I think if we want, I don't know, we can put some money there, and then, if we use it all and we need to go back for some more, we can explain why. But I think we should put something towards there. It's going to cost a couple $1,000s, you said, just to level the floor. So we got to at least have a couple $1,000s to do at least that part of it.
And we're getting rent.
Yeah, that does need to be addressed, I think, sooner than later.
Post office.
So I'm confused. We're doing a budget that starts July 1. We want to get this post office before that.
Well, we might not be able to find anybody to work on it before that.
That and the radios, we're talking about they would all be waiting till July.
Okay.
I mean, if you're putting them in the budget, yes, there were things that you're waiting till July.
Okay. My confusion just left.
When the foam was installed, was it not required to have a barrier on the foam?
That's what I don't understand.
It was, and I don't think that it was. I think I'll just end there.
Copy.
I have $1,000 under maintenance and repair for the post office, just to give you reference, we had $1,000 in there in 2022. We spent $185. We had $1,000 in there this year. So far, we have not spent any of that $1,000. So I'm going to propose that we use this year's $1,000 to do the floor joist thing, which we're thinking is going to cost $1,200. And you just put a little extra in there for next year on top of that 1,000 to cover whatever we need to do for those walls. So just tell me what, if you want to change the 1,000 to
1,200 or 2,500 or something.
yeah, whatever you want to change it. That's not a significant change, so.
That would enable us to get the real important stuff done so it doesn't get worse.
Correct. Okay, so I'm plugging in a number of 2,500 instead of 1,000 for next year.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. It's pretty small down there and it's well supported. It just needs a little attention. Yeah.
Anything else as it relates to the budget that we need to discuss?
The only other thing that I don't know if we addressed or not was there any additional funding that we needed to have to deal with the expansion of the parking area at Casey's Hill?
Well,
I know we were going to address that and then ran out of time or money or whatever, and I wanted to know like where do we stand with that project, and do we need to come up with, because I thought we got a culvert and then the culvert had to be used somewhere else and
yeah, so
everything like that. So I'm just like, I'd really like to get that,
plan.
then, that really tackled, because that is always an issue this time of year with Mountain Road.
the culvert was purchased. I think you used your select board contingency fund for it. I think we could track where it was. And then the culverts had to be used because there was a collapse up on Silly Hill.
Right. So
A couple of them were used. I think 60 feet, at least 60 feet were ordered, I think. So, and we could look back at the minutes.
I'm not questioning whether or not we use it, and I believe we did. It's just a matter of, we need to keep the materials and money available to do that job, because it is a priority. In my mind, that's a priority to get that done.
I did get a quote on culverts again after that one meeting. We discussed it a couple months ago, maybe. I'll have that right here. I know you may have it in your email. I don't know, but Brad does have it as well. But so we did get numbers for culverts. We started stockpiling clean fill that we've removed from ditches and places up at the pit separate, so we could utilize that as well. To save on fill.
I guess I'm hearing that we don't need to make any adjustments as it relates to that.
You may for the culverts.
Well, you're only talking about adding, what, 2 culverts and,
No, there's 60 feet, right? That's 6.
I mean, you do have a line in here, culvert line, so
25. Oh yeah, that's 3. Wanted 3 extra, use them somewhere.
So, yeah, and you were thinking about going to plastic?
Well, the culvert that is under
Mountain.
Mountain Road currently is plastic. A black plastic culvert. That is in good shape. The hitch galvanized culverts to that plastic culvert is not. You can't combine, you can't mix the two. I mean, you can mix them, but they don't make a collar or a band to connect one style to another. So my opinion is we should, if we're going to just connect that one that's on Mountain Road, we should utilize the same, which would be less expensive, and it's only going to be under a parking lot.
It's not like it's getting pounded on the main
Right.
road where the frost is getting driven down.
so you have $36,000 in your culvert guardrail line, and which is a $10,000 increase over last year. And what I have in the notes is that it's for Pleasant Valley Road and Harvey Road guardrail. And then it says Stevensville ? Because I think there's some discussion about putting in something more permanent at the Stevensville spot where the Jersey barriers are.
Right.
So I don't have anything earmarked to purchase replacement culverts for the job at Casey's Hill. So do we have a ballpark of what you would want me to add on that line item?
What are they like?
$6,000.
No, they're not that much, are they? I go down and get the quote. You emailed it to me?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember.
Yep.
I can run down and get the quote if you want to just.
Stevensville, question mark, and then I'm going to put
And the other thing is that
Casey's.
you might refresh my memory on what we're going to do with, we are going to buy some more of those radar friendly.
Yeah, those are added,
Those are in there?
$10,000 of our, those were in there in version 3. I think we added those.
So I think if we could, to me, the only, the culvert and then address this radio issue so we have better communication, I think would be outstanding.
Okay. So we can get those things ironed out and then send you, it'll be version 6. I have it as version 5.2 because I'm just making notes while we're talking. But it'll be version 6. And I will get that email to you as soon as we have the numbers for the radios.
Yeah.
And what we're basically talking about is whether we're going to switch and go to the other ones or whether we're going to do the UHF thing. And if you do UHF, correct me if I'm wrong, but you need one UHF radio for every truck, plus a couple of handhelds for the road crew and something for here, probably a handheld and a radio for here.
At least.
You would need a base radio here and you need a base radio at the town garage.
Yeah. So, all right. So Russ is going to work on that
I
quote.
will call John tomorrow morning.
Well, we say that, but if you can take a portable radio, because we're at the base of Mansfield, and we can hit that repeater with a portable radio, then you don't need to buy, you don't have to have the redundancy.
We don't need a base.
You don't
here.
need a base radio and a portable radio. You could have, a portable radio as long as you can hit the repeater on Mount Mansfield, then we're good. But if we can't, then yeah, we need to have something a little bit more robust, which would be a base, like a base radio, it's basically like a radio that would be in one of our trucks,
Yeah.
a 25 watt or more radio.
Okay. And then the only other thing, I added all the other changes that we talked about. The only last items that I have that we need to discuss are the salary benefit lines, those potential changes. And I did all the other adjustments based on the executive session last week. So that's all I have. So if I send this out to you, let's just assume by Monday afternoon, you all have it with whatever changes we want to put in it. Then there can be some back and forth. And then hopefully we'll have something by Tuesday or Wednesday that I can then give Sherry so she can put them into the warning. And then when we meet on Thursday night, we'll look at that budget. Hopefully you'll accept that. And then if any of those numbers need to be tweaked again before it's final, and again, I can change it. We can have version 6. And then if there's a few last minute changes we need to make, we have version 7, I print it downstairs and you approve it. It doesn't matter. We can do that. And we can make changes to the warning by hand if need be on Thursday as well.
Do
I
we
think
need to warn that back and forth so that it can become a part of a public record and the public will know what we backed and forthed about?
I don't think you should have any back and forth via email.
Yeah, that was
No.
what I was wondering.
I think just, you all have an understanding of what's going to happen here. As soon as we get all the numbers, we'll get you the new version. And you could even reach out to me individually if you'd like. And then the warning will be drafted according to the new version. And if there's some change on Thursday, we
Then
can
we'll make them
it.
on Thursday.
We can make it.
I would suggest we just communicate directly with Jen
Or a Jen.
without replying all. And then, if things are consistent, and then you plug it in and we can
Okay.
finalize everything on Thursday.
Right. And anything that needs to be tweaked or changed on Thursday, to be clear, would then become version 7. Because it'll be version 6 that I'm sending you. It will end up becoming version 7 in the end, which doesn't matter, except it does because we look back from year to year at the different versions to see what changes we make as the discussions go on.
As long as, in the packet, the budget is going to go out. If there's any changes made at that meeting, it'll be reflected in the minutes, and then you approve the budget.
Correct.
So,
Next week.
And the warning accordingly.
Okay.
Oh, it just came to me. I was asked about streetlights on Park Street, that it's very dark.
Again.
And I don't know how many streetlights, I guess I haven't been paying that close attention, but I've been told that it's very dark, especially for those that want to walk on the sidewalk, with their dog in the evening or whatever type of thing. And I didn't know what streetlights cost or anything like that.
I think we should hold on that because given
Other
what
things
we
going
know,
on.
other things that are happening, we should hold on that, would be my recommendation.
Okay.
I can get you those numbers. We did looked at it last year.
I don't
It's
think we
a
should
flat
even-
fee, but I agree. I wouldn't look at
I
it through
agree with
this.
that. We've got
That's
to wait
fine.
till everything else comes down.
Okay.
So Russ's email says 120 feet. Okay, so the 120 feet, 24-inch plastic, Webb's price was $34.84.
So if we use 40, went high.
No, 3,400. So
Right, so if
I
we
ju-
went 4,000,
Yeah, I think that's more than enough.
That would take the 36 and make it 40 right on the money.
There we go.
Okay.
then that would,
And they're going to Casey's Hill, these 6 plastic.
And they're not going anywhere else.
well,
We're going to get this project done.
if a natural disaster comes up,
That's more-
they're going to go on a road. They're not
Of
going to
course.
go in a parking lot.
Of course. I'm kidding.
Okay, so that's that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be fun?
All right. Are we good with where we are?
Yes.
I left my pen down there again.
And if you read through this stuff and you have more questions about the deficit or anything, don't reach out anytime.
Borrow your pen again.
My pens,
I left
Brett.
it down there. I'm just gonna.
Now you owe me two. Just kidding.
So now we're on to receiving the voter petition regarding increasing the number of select board members from 3 to 5.
Here, take my spot. Mike's on.
Oh, that's the Michael.
Hmm?
This is your mic. Michael, it says. Is that your Michael? No? Okay.
No.
No, wrong spelling. All right. Hi, Dan. So as you know from the packet, we received a voter back petition for adding 2 new members to the select board. Just drawing a blank, but yeah. So did a little research, and so it meets the 5%, which is what, the 133 signatures that that needs to happen, and I am just fumbling tonight, sorry.
It's because of the cameras. You know the cameras are on there.
I don't care about that. I really don't. So yeah, let's just start over.
So
Go ahead.
would a motion to accept the petition be in order?
Sure.
So I move that we accept the petition as presented.
Second that motion.
So we have a motion and second, discussion on the motion.
So my understanding is that by accepting the petition, then that would move it to be an article to be decided upon at town meeting.
Sort of. So this is a binding article. And a binding article is an article that allows voters under the statute to have some say. So it's like going from 3 to 5 on the select board. It's increasing school boards and anything that allows voters under the statute. Do you know what I mean?
So this would not be a voice vote at town meeting. This would be like a ballot initiative.
This is a ballot thing because Underhill does all public questions by ballot. So this has to be on a ballot per the statute.
I'm good with that.
And as part of this discussion, can you explain for the public record what it means, what petitions that people present, before town meeting over the years? Why does the select board have the right to reject some and not include those as part of the petition? And why do they have not a choice to accept others?
So over the years, this might be maybe the third or fourth one that I've ever gotten that's a binding article. So the difference between binding articles and the non are anything that's binding gives voters authority through statute. And everything else is pretty much advisory. So, or you can reject based on frivolous. But if a petition comes in and the law speaks to it, then you have to accept it. If it's just the nuclear thing, do we want to advise Congress about the nuclear thing? Those are things that you don't have to do because we have no control as voters over that. It's whether we have control that you have to accept it or not. This petition here, we go from 3 to 5, which means this board here will have to have a special election at actually some point. But in the short term, these people oh my God. So if it passes, you immediately fill the 2 vacancies, okay? By
So
statute.
The vacancies are appointments of the select.
Select board appoints those. So you appoint until the next election. So you'd have to have a special election at some point. So you could actually have it like in August and November when we already got 2 elections happening. And those,
Or you could appoint till town meeting, correct?
no, we have to have a special election.
You
I
have to
spoke to VLCT
Oh,
today.
so there will be a special election. You
There will
cannot-
be.
Can you appoint to
You
fill the
can
seats?
appoint, they appoint to fill the seats until we have that election. And then those people that are appointed would have to run, and these terms would be only for 1 year. So then the following year, we would stagger the position so that they would run, like one of you would expire in a second. These terms will be 2 years after that. So then a 2 and a 3 would automatically each year just become vacant and we go through the process. But yeah, so that's the only reason binding articles is if the statute allows the voter to do it. That's the only difference between that and everything else. If the statute allows the voter to do it, then we can do it like charter changes, things like that.
Can this special election,
Mhm.
anticipating, piggyback into, say, the primary election in August?
Mhm.
So so we don't have to set up the whole place and spend extra money for election.
Right.
Is there a
Or
time?
November, although that might be more confusing.
But is there a time limitation when you have to have that special election?
No,
Then why can't you go to the next town meeting? Has to be
it
special.
has to be a special
Has to be
meeting.
special, okay.
So you can have a town meeting and a special meeting all in one?
Yeah, so like in August, we would have a special town meeting and then a state primary at the same time.
Now, could the public, the voters of Underhill, decide, well, we want a special election earlier and
Yes.
circulate a petition?
Mhm.
So that's an option too, if people want to go to that effort. But we will probably, if it passes, the select board would probably announce when that special election would be pretty quick.
Yeah.
If
Then all
somebody
that
has
makes
a
sense.
disagreement with that, they can get a petition going to get it earlier.
Right.
Okay,
That petition would be very different from this one. I think the percentage is much higher, correct? To have a special town meeting,
No, it's still 5%.
still 5%?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The charter change was higher though,
The charter change is 15%.
right?
Right.
So a special town meeting is not 15%.
No, it's 5%. It's for the charter, it's to remove somebody, it's 15% because we decided to make it, if you were going to remove an elected official, you were going to earn that right to get it on a ballot.
thank you for all that clarification.
Sorry, it was garbled.
Very clear. Ready to vote?
Sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? There are no oppositions. This motion carries 3-0.
All right, it's 7:06 and I have executive session here on the agenda next.
Well, I move that we enter executive session under 1 VSA, Section 313, Paragraph A3, for the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Do you want to mention
Aye.
who is going to be included in your executive session?
The select board and Jennifer as the finance officer for a bit of time to make sure that we get everything done.
That's good. All right, so I'm going to stop the recording and
The
then.
motion carries 3-0,
Thank you.
and it is 7:07.
So are you, I think what we'll do is just end the meeting here. Will you record what your action was in the end?
Certainly.
Okay. So that way, to avoid everybody hanging out, we'll just end the meeting now
Mhm.
on the virtual end of things, I mean.